Hi friends, today I'm going to show you how to preserve an arthropod that you've caught, you found, or maybe it's a beloved pet who's no longer with us. In order for us to do this project, you're going to need a piece of styrofoam, nice flat styrofoam. You will need some pins. I have insect pins. They are black and they have a little gold tip on the end. And you can get these all over the internet. If you don't have these and you have silver pins for sewing instead, you can use those also. I think it's also useful to have tweezers. These are insect tweezers, and the inside, they are smooth and flat. They don't have like little grippy stripes because sometimes that can damage our arthropods. So if you use tweezers, just be really careful with them. And if you think this is going to be a hobby of yours, I would recommend picking up some of these flat end insect tweezers. Lastly, you're going to need your creature. Here's my creature. This is a beetle from Germany. I had it living in my classroom. Sorry. I had it living in my classroom for a little while, and we fed it, took care of it, and then eventually it moved on to the great beyond. And last night I put it in some hot water. I just boiled water, dropped it in, kept it overnight. And now you can see it's quite bendy. Ordinarily, when an arthropod starts to dry out, it's going to be crunchy and fragile, and you have to be really careful with them. But once you put them in hot water overnight, they start to get a lot bendier. If you have something like a butterfly, which has those really nice fragile wings, or you have a honeybee or a bumblebee that's furry, if you put it in hot water, the hot water can damage. So instead, you take your styrofoam, you put your creature on top, and you put it in an airtight container with hot water too. So it floats around in that hot water, and the steam is able to get into the arthropod's body. So it doesn't damage the butterfly wings, and it doesn't make your bumblebee's hair look all matted, because once it's matted, it's not going to look fluffy anymore. So, helpful hint. So the first thing we have to do to our arthropod is we need to have an anchor pin. And an anchor pin is the one and only pin that goes completely through its body. It's going to go all the way through. You have to choose your spot where you're going to stick it through. I'm going to choose right here in the very, very center. I don't know if you can see, there's a little triangle here. A lot of beetles have that feature, and it makes a really great place to anchor your pin. So I'm going to take this and push it straight through, and that is the one pin that goes through its body. Every other pin is going to go around its body or touch its body or position it in some way, but only one goes through. And this way, when it's all dry and it's all done, you'll be able to pick it up. It will be dry and fragile again, and you'll have a handle for it to move it around, to position it, or to observe it. You can even turn it upside down, and that way you're able to see the bottom side of it, and it won't damage your arthropod. What do I do with my pins now? Jeez, come on. All right, I want to position it so it's totally flat on the styrofoam. Right now you can see it's a little bit above it, so we're going to position it totally flat. If you have to turn your pin a little bit to an angle to get that all the way on, sometimes I move my head down to one side or the other to make sure that I can make it as precise as possible. I've checked both sides. I've moved my head around. Now I'm going to start pinning my arthropod, and I'll just put a couple here. And what I do is, the first thing I do is I keep its body still. I anchor its body because it will spin around on the pin. And once I have those two on either side, you'll notice they do not go through it. They just sit on either side. And this keeps it from spinning back and forth on the pin. Otherwise it starts to swing a little, and we don't want that. Because we want this to be as precise as possible. Sometimes people will start off by putting a sheet of graph paper on their styrofoam, and that helps that person make sure that their legs that they lay out are symmetrical and precise. But I'm not looking to go that precise today. I just want to make sure that I have the legs out. I'm going to see if I can get the antenna out. But you'll notice I'm just going around each one of the limbs. I'm going around each one of the little, these are called tarsus right here. They have a little hook on the end of their feet. So these are tarsus, and sometimes they shrivel up when they dry. So I just want to make sure that they're going to stay flat and visible. And you can choose however you like to position your arthropod. That's the really nice thing about preserving arthropods, is getting to decide how it's going to look, because you can always change it later when you are finished. You can always put it in back into the hot water and then do it again if you find something is asymmetrical, or maybe you change your mind about how you want your arthropod to look. So, all right. Lastly, so I have all my legs taken care of now. I want to make sure I can see the antenna. There's actually antenna here, but they're just a little hard to pull out. I'm going to use the underside of my pin here. Oh, there it is. It looks like it's a little short. I might not be able to put the antenna out. I will try my best though. Let's see. No, maybe I can't. There it is. See, it's really short. It must have got jumbled around in transit. So I don't think we're going to be able to do the antenna today. But there's my finished arthropod. Now I have a special shout out to my student Chloe, who brought in this really cool hornet and asked if we could pin it. Unfortunately, my schedule won't allow for it, so I told Chloe that I would make a YouTube video and give her a shout out. So here's her shout out, and here is her hornet. Now this one has wings, so we have to do something a little bit different for when we pin wings. First off, we're going to put in our anchor pin backwards. So we have our arthropod. We're going to use our tweezers here, and we want to turn it upside down. It's going to lay on its back. And the first thing we do is we put in our anchor pin. So now we have this great handle anytime we need to pick it up. If we need to turn it around for any reason, we can always put it into the styrofoam like that. But anyway, when we pin it, we want to make sure that it's on its back. And here's why. We're going to use paper to hold its wings down flat. So I'm using 2 pieces of tracing paper because you can see through it, and it's really easy to pin wings when you can see through the paper that you use. So these are just 2 little pieces of tracing paper that I picked off. So I'm going to anchor its abdomen so it doesn't spin around. See how it spins that way? We want it to stay as still as possible. So I'm going to pin on either side. Here's 1. Here's 2. All right, and now I'm able to move the wings around without worrying the bug is going to spin. So I use my tweezers, and you can see the wings seem to unfold when you lift them, and that is always a welcome feature. So I have my paper covering the wings, and now I'm going to use pins to hold the paper in place. Now, I don't want to go through the wings because then we'll end up with holes in the wing, and that's not really pretty. You know, why damage the wing if we don't have to? So I'm going to do the other wing here. And you always want to do the wings first. The reason we do the wings first is because we spread the legs out over on top of the wings. And then if we do the legs first, then all of those pins and the legs will be in the way when we set out to do wings. So do wings first, then legs, and use paper. Okay, so now I have my paper spreading out the wings. You'll notice beside it here, there is an antenna. The antenna broke off of the hornet here, so we're going to save it, and then we'll glue it on when it's totally dry. So now we're going to pin the rest of the legs of the hornet. I'm going to move its abdomen so it's a little bit more visible. It's a little bit more centered that way. Now I'm going to start with the other antenna that's still attached. Oh, look at that. See those antennae, they're really kind of beautiful. So if you ever get into actually pinning your own arthropods, pay special attention to your antenna. Here I'm going to use the tarsus to my advantage, the little feet hooks, the tarsus. I'm going to use it to hook around the pin. Oops, come back. Let me use the, there we go. Now, so I've managed to use the hook foot of my creature to hold on to my pin right here. So let's do some more. Now, I want to point out, I have had coffee this morning, and coffee makes my fingers slightly shaky. If you don't drink coffee, you don't have sugar, you don't have this problem. You can minimize this problem by waiting till after you pin to have your coffee, or just giving up coffee altogether. When this was my primary job, pinning arthropods, I did not drink coffee. So, fun fact. Coffee makes a big difference in your ability to keep your fingers from getting a little trembly. I'm trying to move it so you can see it better. Being really careful that I don't stick that pin through a wing. Even though it's a foot pin, it could still go through a wing. So you always have to be really careful that the end of your pin makes its way around the wing, just like this, so it doesn't go through. All right, now I'm going to put one pin here to hold the paper down by that antenna. And I'm going to use clear nail polish. Clear nail polish is an excellent glue for using to glue arthropod pieces back together. So there's my finished hornet. Here's the extra antenna that will be glued on after. There's all the legs and the paper that goes over the wings. And what I'll do is I'll put this in a dry place for about a week, and it's going to become super dry, and it will look like this. Now this arthropod is a millipede, and it has been here in this position for about a week. And I'm going to start taking the pins out to show you what it's like when it comes out. Now, first thing I want to point out is this has one antenna that's curled up here. This one has an antenna that I pulled out. And so if you take this out, you do it really carefully so you don't snap off the antenna. I'm going to start taking out pins slowly. It has a lot of these fine little legs in the front that will definitely break off if I bump into them with a pin. So I take off all of my pins except my one anchor pin. This is the one I keep. So it will always be a handle for me whenever I need to pick up my arthropod to move it around. I pinned it so it has this nice curve to make it look like it was still a little bit alive, even though the colors changed after it's dead. So now I'm able to pick it up. It's still stiff. I can observe the legs. I can move it around. And it's easy to draw this way because it's still. You'll find if you draw arthropods as much as I do, sometimes it's very tricky because they move. So here is my finished arthropod. I'm going to add it to my collection. So that's one way that we can preserve arthropods. Another way is in a wet specimen vial. You can get a container, put some rubbing alcohol in it. This is a centipede, and I keep this in my myriapod and arthropod, myriapod and arachnid collection. Now this, I have an old millipede in here I'm going to take out, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of use for it, so I'm just going to compost it. Unfortunately, it broke the other pieces here. But this wasn't pinned. I just found it like this and wanted to be able to show people. But my specimen here that I've preserved is a lot nicer. Here's my box where I keep my myriapods and arachnids. It says myriapods and arachnids. And I put a piece of styrofoam inside. Around the edge, I stuck pins in here to keep it. Here's the head of one pin. I put the pin there to keep the styrofoam from shifting around anytime I move it. So the pins can be used that way too. And now I'm going to take my myriapod and add it to my collection. In a week, my hornet and my rhinoceros beetle will be ready too, but they're going to go in a different collection. Thanks for watching.